I am Saree Makdisi, joined by my brothers Osama and Kareem, and we're all gathered today to talk about the repercussions of what's been happening to our most recent guest, Nadera Shalhoub Kevorkian, Professor Nadera Shalhoub Kevorkian, who has recently been suspended from her position as a professor at Hebrew University. We want to talk about that because part of what was used against Nadira in the university and in the Israeli media writ large was what she said in our podcast. And in looking at what comes up in the letter that was written to her, and of course also the media coverage discussing what she said, it's so clear to all of us. This is the first thing we want to begin with: is the extent to which lines from what she said were cherry picked carefully to try to present her in a particularly bad light. And a lot of the things that she said, which would complicate the picture they're trying to paint of her, are completely kind of overridden and overlooked in such a way, again, just to basically to perform a kind of character assassination of her, in effect. We could talk about some of the specific cherry picking. I want to point out, for example, that Nadira said repeatedly about what happened on October 7th, "Not in my name," and that line she repeated two or three times in our discussion is nowhere mentioned in the coverage that of this sort of attack on her that's followed since then, which is particularly striking, of course. What I want to say on behalf of myself and my brothers, and I'm sure they'll join me in saying this, is that we, of course, stand completely in solidarity with Nadra. That it's outrageous for any academic or any human being, not just an academic, but especially an academic in this instance, to be suspended from their position for articulating not just a particular intellectual point of view, but a point of view that is consistent with humanity, with reason, with peace, with equality and rights and justice. It's just all the principles that Nadira so eminently stands for. And I think it says a lot about the institutions that are opposing her, that are incapable of recognizing not just her own humanity, but the humanity that she represents in the Palestinian cause that she was also speaking to, the principles of the Palestinian cause, which are, of course, primarily about justice and rights and equality. That's the first thing we want to say. And then, of course, to my mind, also, and I'm sure my brothers agree with me as well on this point, there's also the issue that comes up both in the letter written to her by her university and in the media coverage in the Israeli press. A lot of this has to do with denial, and this is really what we should spend some of our time talking about today, because the practice of denial, about which I've written a whole book about Zionism and denial, it's here in full force. It seems as though there's an incapacity on the part of Israelis and Zionists in general to recognize what it is that they are engaged in, what their project fundamentally represents, is a project of, from the beginning, from 1948 onwards, is a project of dispossession, ethnic cleansing, destruction, and now what we're seeing in Gaza, full-blown genocide. That there seems to be an incapacity on their part to understand that, and of course to focus on that. That's the fundamental outrage that all of us should be talking about, rather than what Nadira herself said or didn't say. That the outrage before us is genocide. That's what we should be really talking about. And I think that it's still mind-boggling. Again, I'm not a psychoanalyst, but to me, it's mind-boggling that not just the state, forget the state, but that these civil society institutions within the state, the academic system, the journalism and so forth, there's this incredible incapacity to understand what the state is about, what the state is engaged in, what they themselves, therefore, as part of civil society, are complicit in, because they are complicit in, especially by trying to deny it and cover it up. They're complicit in the acts that the Israeli state is perpetrating, not just in the Gaza Strip, but has been perpetrating for 7 decades now to the Palestinian people writ large, the ones in the West Bank, the ones in Jerusalem, the ones in pre-48, and of course the Palestinians in exile as well. So with that in mind, as a few basic points, Osama, Kareem, what do you make of this event, and of course the syndrome of denial to which it also speaks?